The scrolling captions at the beginning of Blade Runner can be taken as a directly informative account of the film's historical and technological scenario, but the use of a font called Gaudi Old Style is a hint that the account is false. Gaudi Old Style is very popular among academic institutions, with several universities having it as their official font. Basic informative opening captions in movies tend to use more blocky-looking formats, an infamous example being the caption crawls used at the beginning of the Star Wars movies. So the audience doesn't need to recognise the Blade Runner opening caption font by specific name to understand its implication. We all recognise the general style of this font as being the kind of thing that's used in publications such as magazines, books and scientific papers. In other words, what we're reading is some future historian's account of the film's setting, not a direct statement of truth from the filmmakers. It's ironic that the caption sequence begins with an account of robot, yet the overall text is written in the kind of robotic and supposedly unbiased manner found in academia. This detached academic framing is also evident in an alternative set of caption descriptions found in one of the script drafts. Here the account gives two dictionary descriptions of the word android. One is from 1976, which was a few years before the movie went into production, and the second is a fictionalized description from the year 2012. At the time the script was written, 2012 was still about 30 years away. The 2012 description offers three meanings, and each one describes a different phase in the history of android evolution. The last description is the important one: third generation synthogenetic, replicant constructed of skin-flesh culture, selected enogenic transfer conversion. There's a no doubt deliberate irony there. What the hell is synthogenetic? Synth means imitation, as in appears to be genetic but is actually something else. Yet the description goes on to say that replicants are constructed of skin-flesh culture. In lab work, a culture is a sample of real genetic organic cells kept in conditions that can be grown. So the 2012 description is saying both that replicants are and aren't imitation organisms. And to confuse the matter, the description ends with the phrase selected enogenic transfer conversion, but I've not been able to find a meaning for the word enogenic. There's ergogenic and exogenic, but not enogenic. What is clear is that replicants are constructed from cultures of real organic tissue, and the abandonment of the word android for the word replicant hints that the slave beings in Blade Runner aren't androids at all. They're living, breathing organisms, genetically engineered, but alive all the same. Apparently, director Ridley Scott requested that the word android be dropped and a suitable alternative label be used in its place. The caption text in the finished movie ports across the basic ironies of the scripted dictionary captions, and adds a description of Blade Runners, the police units who hunt escaped replicants. But the paradoxical account of what a replicant is communicated differently than in the script. The word robot has a capital R, as if it's a trademark in itself, and the paragraph ends with a verification that replicants are created by, quote, genetic engineering, end quote. Later on, lead replicant Roy Batty gives his account.
We're no computers, Sebastian. We're physical.
Physical as in genetic, cellular, organic, flesh and blood. They are alive. They are simply humans who have been bred and genetically tampered with, but they're still human. We don't call dogs synthetic just because breeders have cultivated selective physical characteristics in them, and we don't call genetically tampered rats or mice synthetic either. As the other Blade Runner character Holden says in a scripted scene that's not in the film, 3 hours into the autopsy they still think they're cutting up a human. In other words, the replicants are genetically tampered and cultivated humans, and we all are to an extent, considering the self-selective breeding of our parents and the social and economic conditions in which we're raised. The replicant character Pris is even seen eating. How can a synthetic person digest food? It's like that detail has been included specifically to show us the organic nature of replicants. And in this alternative take of his introductory scene, Roy is eating an apple. Incidentally, in Ridley Scott's previous film Alien, an actual android character somehow has the ability to eat food. Similar confusing messages. The film and script deliberately blur this basic truth that replicants are not synthetic at all, but are actually alive. The enhanced physical abilities of the replicants nudge us into assuming that replicants are either robotic or are constructed out of tough, non-organic materials, punching through walls and metal.
more than you.
Precision acrobatics, and resistance to intense cold.
Hey, cold. Those are my eyes. Freezing.
The script explains too that Leon is unaffected by the heat in the opening interview scene, while Holden is sweating. That's more subtle. But there's an irony in all this. No living creature would have a cellular structure where its skin could resist sub-zero icy temperatures on direct contact, and it's not plausible that genetic engineering would achieve such a result either. Nor would genetic engineering accomplish bones, muscle tissue or skin that would not be damaged by punching through metal or concrete. And if they did have those kinds of physical resistances, then there wouldn't need to be an emotional test to determine who is and isn't a replicant. All you'd need is a sample of skin cells and you'd be able to spot the huge differences in cellular and genetic structure. Or a simple temperature reaction test could be conducted on the subject's skin. So it appears to me that the superhuman abilities of the replicants are a deliberate red herring in the story. They keep the viewer confused as to what a replicant actually is. And yet, when replicants are killed, their deaths are bloody, like Ridley Scott wants us to realise through the exposure of their gory innards that they are just flesh and blood. Aside from the superhuman physical abilities, another implausible facet of replicants is the idea that a fully grown human being could be constructed from scratch out of cultivated tissues and then have memories implanted. The mind-boggling complexity of a fully grown human is the result of near 20 years of snail-paced physical growth aided by nutrition, sensory experience, educational conditioning and so on. Sometimes surgeons are able to transplant individual organs, blood or other tissues, but the results aren't generally predictable. Transplanted tissues are very often rejected by the body of the subject. Even today in 2017, heart transplants are a major risk. Heads, eyes, brains, nervous systems and many other body features still cannot be transplanted. It's impressive what can be transplanted, but the notion of constructing an entire fully grown person from cultivated parts is still pure science fiction. The implanting of false memories would actually be a necessity for adult humans created from scratch. Otherwise they'd have the mind of an infant at best. They'd have none of the past subconscious experiences that are the basis of general adult physical dexterity, our ability to walk, our ability to use our fingers as precision tools of object manipulation and so on. And they'd have no understanding of language or even the basic ability to make sense of visual experience. These psychological traits take many years to develop in childhood, and as psychologists have discovered, many traits such as language have to be learned early in life, and if they aren't, then the fully formed adult human brain will be unable to play catch-up. The fact that Blade Runners use sophisticated psychological tests to detect replicants, as opposed to blood tests, X-rays or DNA samples, shows that replicants are basically as human as the rest of us, aside from some minor genetic alterations. It's the bureaucratic lies and labels that have resulted in them being perceived as non-human.
Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard.
Organic entities referred to as machines? That's pure propaganda. The script includes additional dialogue in which Blade Runners themselves become confused as to what kinds of language they should use to describe replicants. This corruption of genetic science isn't as far-fetched as it may appear. Go do some research into a US agricultural firm called Monsanto, and there you'll find a real-life example of a corporation using genetic modification to bureaucratically monopolize portions of the farming industry. While the exact physical composition of replicants is confused by contradictory information, the status of replicants as slaves is not. Actually, it's interesting that in science fiction, robots and other synthetic beings are frequently described as slaves, yet in the real world of technology, we don't think of machines and computers as slaves. For something to be a slave implies it to be alive, or at least self-conscious.
I think, Sebastian. Therefore I am.
So the term slave labour is used in the opening captions, and Roy spells the theme out boldly in dialogue.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
Remember that the captions refer to the story context in a detached past tense. Nowhere in the film do we hear characters other than a replicant describe replicants as slaves. However, the advertisement dialogue from the blimp talks of replicants as servants or personal friends, and the description is taken further in the alternate cuts of the film. A mysterious line in the film is given more substance in the script.
Nothing is worse than having an itch you can never scratch.
In the script, that line is preceded by Leon saying, "Sex, reproduction, security, the simple things, but no way to satisfy them, to be homesick with no place to go, potential with no way to use it, lots of little oversights in the Nexus 6. And in another moment he says, "Painful to live in fear, isn't it?" That's in the film, but he also adds in the script, "That's how it is to be a slave," which was Roy's line from later, and he says the future is sealed off, he grovels, he waits. Another indicator of the desire of replicants for a normal human life is this entry on page 38 regarding Pris's introduction. She crosses the street past a window full of wedding dresses, as the spinner zips off in the distance. The spinner is a police car, but that specific point about wedding dresses, are she and Roy wanting to get married? Something that's more abstract is the depiction of replicants as being toys, dolls or playthings. Sebastian's apartment is full to the brim with assorted toys, which have varying degrees of lifelike animation. The Pinocchio-nosed military soldier appears toy-like from a distance, but close up its face is revealed to be living, breathing flesh and blood. He's a toy, but made of living flesh. In this same set, Pris paints herself and does her hair to appear doll-like, and later pretends to be a doll or mannequin in the trap that she sets for Deckard. And she thrashes about like a malfunctioning toy when she's shot. Like with the slavery theme, Roy is the one who verbalizes the subtext.
Hi, Roy.
Gosh, you really got some nice toys here.
He affectionately strokes the walking teddy bear, and it's left for us to wonder if that teddy bear is robotic or another weird fleshy concoction. Those are the more obvious replicants as flesh toys metaphors, but there are more. Pris plays with a Barbie doll that has no legs, maybe she identifies with it. A peculiar example is the midget-like group of creatures that try to steal items from Deckard's car. Their flashing goggles give the impression of them being robots, but they act like little kids. Note that mannequins are visible in a shop window behind them too. Mannequins are frequent as replicant doll metaphors. They're present in the reception of JF's building, lots of them piled up here like disposable women. Eerie silhouettes of these mannequins appear to covertly watch Deckard make his way into the building. And here, in a behind-the-scenes take, the mannequins are lit, and guess what? They have makeup smeared on their faces, and the two closest ones are naked. In these shots, naked women or replicants, we can't tell which, are dancing with hockey masks on like faceless sex bots. Very similar to Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. When half-naked replicant Zora is executed, she's surrounded by mannequins and ends up as a lifeless doll herself. And Rachel appears expressionless with pale-faced makeup in several of her scenes. Pris is, in so many words, revealed to be a sex slave.
The foreskin job is Pris, a basic pleasure model, a standard item for military clubs in the outer colonies.
And Zora is also tagged for political assassination. In other words, she's probably a honey trap. She offers sex to her targets to get them alone before killing them. Why else have a really good-looking woman as an assassin? And she's taken a job as a nightclub stripper for cover. Incidentally, in the original novel version, she took the role of an opera singer, so that's a big change between the two, and it shows the emphasis on sexuality from Ridley Scott and the writer. The use of replicants as sex toys is also communicated through Deckard's response to them. He gets carried away flirting with Zora and nearly gets killed for it. There's also additional dialogue in the novel, script and deleted scenes alluding to Deckard getting confused by his sexual desire for replicants. It's unclear in the film whether Deckard really suspected the snake dancer of being a replicant or whether he was trying it on, but that confusion is cleared up in the script. He figures that the evening doesn't have to be a waste as he starts drying Zora. In a more sinister tone, the so-called lovemaking scene between Deckard and Rachel is uncomfortably close to a depiction of rape. Refusing to let her leave, rough handling, and taking advantage of her fugitive status. Does she submit because she's afraid of him or because she wants him? What was filmed is reported to have been much more carnal than what's shown in the film, so much so that actress Sean Young was intensely distressed by the filming experience. And in the script, Rachel tells Deckard, "Bite me, do whatever you want to me." Total sexual submission. When Pris attacks Deckard in her flesh-coloured minimal costume, she has the appearance of a naked woman. Page 70 of the script describes her dressed up as a bleached white face and black ringed eyes, a sexual waif, a savage doll. She picks out one of the dresses, puts it on, and stands there, the mannequins surrounding her like a family tableau. In a foreshadow of Deckard's lust about him almost getting killed by Zora, Gaff depicts Deckard as a stickman with an erection, just like he depicted him as a chicken for letting Bryant control him. And Bryant's descriptions in the film and script are revealing too. In the film he calls them skin jobs, another confirmation that replicants are flesh and blood. And in the script he calls Rachel a tit job. Ridley Scott once said of Blade Runner that he wanted the replicants to be lovable, and he certainly achieves this in a variety of ways, such as Rachel playing piano, Pris playing with makeup, Leon acting like a fidgety nervous kid in his interview. Their quirky emotions give them a childlike innocence, and yet no children are seen anywhere in the film. They're presented to us like children, but the other characters in the movie see them as sex objects. Through the symbol of a white bird, and I don't know if it's a dove or a pigeon, Batty shows Deckard that replicants have souls. After being whacked in the head with a pipe, he shouts,
That's the spirit!
And just a second or two later, a room full of doves or white birds bursts into motion. Batty, clinging onto life being that he's dying, clings onto a white bird as he leaps across a giant gap to save Deckard. And when he is dying, the bird flies away, and it's the first and only blue sky we see in the film, which is almost certainly a symbol of Roy's spirit leaving his body for the heavens. Funny thing is, it's been claimed by the filmmakers that the day shot was used because they desperately needed a shot to insert, and it was all they had. And yet, in the behind-the-scenes documentary Dangerous Days, there's an alternative take of the dove flying away at night. Another possible symbol of the replicants having souls is a shot of Pris after she accidentally awakens Sebastian. She asks, "How do I look?" as a winged cherub or angel hangs behind her. And Roy Batty made a bizarre comment about angels when questioning Chew.
Fiery the angels fell. Deep thunder rolled around their shores, burning with the fires of oak.
The angels fell, just as the replicants fell to Earth in a stolen shuttle. And that could also be why Roy has white hair, angelic, like the white soul symbolising bird he releases from his grip when he dies. Right, thanks for watching. This is just one in a series of videos I'm doing on Blade Runner, so be sure to check out the others at my site, collativelearning.com.